You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. And of course, today we are pitting two characters against each other. You know, we haven't done this in a while, I don't think. This is reminiscent of our old Duel of the Fates segment. Like a long time ago. Long time ago. But this one, we're pitting Mace Windu versus Count Dooku. I believe this is an idea that you had toward the end of our last show. That, I don't know, for whatever reason, it did seem like a good idea. And we haven't done it in a while. And again, it's the whole like Duel of the Fates thing. That was a segment back when we used to do like 3 segments for our show. That was one of them. And we would usually do a this versus that kind of thing. And a lot of times it did devolve into just, pitting a couple of characters against each other. But this time, yeah, we're doing Mace versus Count Dooku. This is a very interesting matchup, I think. So here's how it's going to break down. We are going to try to... We're going to actually go over a lot of the strengths. We're going to go over their weaknesses. We're going to go over their special attributes. And, we're going to try to break it down that way. Because I think it's really important to do that. Because, again, it would be easy to just, go by the movies and say, oh, we can make a decision based on this or based on that. But, to try to do it in a little bit, I think, better of a way, I think makes more sense. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Isn't that kind of what your approach was too?
Yeah, I mean, I usually do look at the strengths, look at the weaknesses, certain circumstantial things. So yeah, I think this is one of those battles that a lot of Star Wars fans have argued, since these characters came into play, and because these are which you would call probably the more premier lightsaber duelists of that era, and so that's what makes this so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of fascinating anyway because again, this is something that's a little bit different than I think what most people are used to, especially coming from us because generally speaking, we like to do we tend to shy away for some reason from these things. Like I don't know what it is about it. Because do you remember what the last one we did? You remember it at all?
Like a duel?
Yeah, like when we did kind of a... Yeah, I don't either.
Might have been like a bounty hunter one. I think I remember that was like, we did like a
Well, I know
Cad
we
Bane
did,
versus
yeah,
Boba Fett or something like that.
right. We did like a top 10, bounty hunter. We did like, you know what? I think it was like we compared and contrasted Boba Fett versus Cad Bane. That was the last time that I think we did like a, like a this versus that kind of a thing, where we basically compared and contrasted 2 different characters. I don't think that we've done anything since then. I think it's something that we should probably do more often. I was really glad actually that you came up with this last week because sure, we're, like how far away are we now from the what's the 9th Jedi series or whatever?
Couple of days.
Yeah. When does it come out? It's like
5th. On the 5th. Yep.
Yeah, that's like you're right. That is like literally a couple of days. So I mean, that's not a lot. And I think that ultimately one of the things that we'll get into it obviously when we actually review the series. But I think one of the things that's going to be really interesting about that, getting back into the whole swing of reviewing a series and everything, is that's actually taking place outside of the Star Wars canon, right? Like that's just almost like kind of a what if sort of thing. But where I'm really looking forward to, I guess, seeing this is just seeing like what kind of characters they come up with, because I think that in the spirit of doing what we're doing with Windu versus Dooku, I actually think that there's room to do this in like in more instances. You know, like I would love to see us pitting more people against each other in that sense. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, we probably will.
I mean, because I think it's something that our audience would certainly appreciate. I mean, let's jump right into some of the chats here. Now, so far we got Ted, but he kicks us off. He says, "Look, as talented as Dooku is, my money is on Mace, because even though they both seem to have a mix of darkness and light, Mace is trying to use the darkness in service of the light, but Dooku gave into the darkness in attempt to help the light," which is kind of an interesting thing. He says Dooku left or fell out the wrong side of the balancing act. Also, Mace didn't die in episode 3. Yeah, well, you know what? Did you actually? I sent you that part 2 of that whole Vader thing, right? Did you watch it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty intense, man. See,
Pretty
again,
sweet.
it's
Yeah.
like they're doing all this like cool stuff with Disney, you know? And it's like, I mean, come on. Why can't Disney do this? I mean, you got Star Wars Theory giving us better stuff than Disney does. But anyway, I guess we could start getting into this thing a little bit. So we got Mace Windu versus Dooku. Now, we can go over some of the strengths. We can go over some of the weaknesses, some of the special attributes. So basically, you know, you can see it here. I'm basically going to put this up full screen and pretty much like read over this stuff for you guys, so you basically see it. Because again, you know, it might be a little small there in that window, so I want you guys to actually check it out. But we're going to go into this pretty much in depth and really get into this and talk about it. So, I mean, the first thing we got, you know, we got Mace. His strength is he's exceptional lightsaber combatant, immense force powers, physical strength and aggression, and mental discipline. Where the strengths of Dooku are he's a master duelist, he has precision and efficiency, he has powerful force abilities, and strategic intelligence. Now, when you go to the weaknesses, with Mace, you have a rigid worldview, he has limited diplomacy and empathy, aggression can become commitment, and he can definitely underestimate unconventional opponents. Whereas with Dooku, you got extreme arrogance. He's older and less physically durable. Makashi's less effective against groups, and he's also, of course, manipulated by Darth Sidious. And then there's special attributes. You got the Vaapad mastery on Windu's side. You have Shatterpoint ability. You have dark side resistance. You have battlefield leadership. And then Makashi mastery on the Dooku side, curved lightsaber hilt, which does give you a slight advantage against, you know, a lot of conventional duelists. You have Jedi and Sith knowledge, so he kind of plays both sides. And of course, he has political charisma. So that's basically like kind of the, I guess, like the Cliff's Notes version of this thing, right? So again, did you want to, because we could approach this one of two ways. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I mean, you know, I want to give you the, like the option to actually say it. So how do you want to do this? Are we talking about who's going to win in like just a duel, or are we talking like overall, like an all-out battle? So kind of like how Yoda was, right? Where it's like they're dueling when, and then you had like a battle of force powers and, you know, that kind of thing.
I guess we can just do an overall thing. I mean, since we have them here, might as well go all the way with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was just thinking about it in terms of, because if you think about realistically, if these guys are dueling, right? I mean, they're probably it's not just gonna be like, all right, whoever wins, like, the duel, it's like, all right, you're good or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that they're going to, um, they're sure they're gonna get into it. Now, when you look at just like the first strength, right? When you have the whole like Mace is an exceptional lightsaber combatant versus the master duelist of Dooku. Mace is one of the few Jedi who are capable of confronting Sidious. Let's not forget that. And not only did he confront him directly, but he actually held the advantage. And then Dooku is he's basically like considered one of the greatest practitioners of lightsaber combat in the Jedi Order, and he's repeatedly defeated powerful opponents. So if we're just talking about the dueling capabilities, guys, I don't know. What do you think? Because this is actually really, if you really stop and think about it, this is really hard. This is not
Oh, it
an
is.
easy.
It's
It's not
very
an easy
evenly.
thing.
No. They're very evenly matched in this realm. And it's really just depend. I think it's really who shows up that day. It's kind of like who's uh, a better quarterback, Joe Montana, who was heralded as probably like the greatest quarterback of all time, versus now Tom Brady, and it's like they're both great, but I think it's just who shows up that day, you know. In this case, I think we have to look at the style of the two. So with Makashi, which is Dooku's lightsaber form of choice, and mind you, both these guys are masters at all of the forms. So it's not
Right.
like they just mastered their particular form. They know all of them. It's just that this one suits them better. This is their particular favorite style that they seem to work with them better. Okay, so Dooku chose Makashi, and it's more of a fencing. I mean, it's specifically designed to go against other lightsabers. So that in and of itself is an advantage because the style itself is completely created for another person with a lightsaber.
Well, and to that
Um,
end, you basically have
mhm.
somebody like you said, and this goes into the whole play of where he's defeated, a lot of powerful opponents, things like that, and that is an important thing to note because you're right. I mean, this is something that I think a lot of people tend to just go against certain matchups in the films, especially. But even if you take, it's like the saga as a whole, let's say, and I'm including comics, books, whatever, video games. I think a lot of times people do forget that, in addition to the just individual duels, which I think is what a lot of people base things on. Okay, he dueled, person A, B, C, D, and then they sort of slot in what their power is like. But the point that you're bringing up is the fighting style part, which, again, you have to be really geeky to get into this, right? Like, and look, I'll admit, I'm aware of the fighting styles. I haven't memorized them all. I know there's like forms 1 through 7. I think Mace's Vaapad or whatever is like 7, right?
Yep, it is seven.
Okay. So that I remember. I try to, because I have a life, I don't commit a lot of that stuff to memory. However, again, and we did a whole video. You guys could go back and look,
Hmm.
not now, of course, but you can go back and look, and we actually did the whole 7 styles of lightsaber combat. Actually, I think that's what the video's called. But if you type that into
Hmm.
our search on our channel, we go into really big detail about each form, and we've got like a whole, like graphics that illustrate it. I mean, we really went all out for that one. But it is something that I think a lot of times, because it's not put out there that much, I think people overlook it. So you're right. I mean, this is a style that is meant for other lightsaber duelists. So that does give him an advantage.
Yeah, and then the other advantage that he has is the curved hilt that allows him to maneuver the lightsaber more efficiently and better because of the way that the hilt is designed. It allows it to move in his hand, and a lot of the movements associated with Makashi. It's a lot easier to get into that space with that particular lightsaber hilt. Now, Mace, on the other hand, with the Vaapad style, it's more aggressive. It's channeling the dark side in a way where it's like it doesn't consume him, but he uses it almost as a reflector in a way, or to kind of like redirect dark side energy into his style, and so it's more aggressive. Uh, I think for certain people, and I don't know. I think depends on how long the battle goes. I mean, I think if the battle goes a substantial amount of time, I think Dooku might win out just simply because it's economy of movement. It doesn't take as much movement in Makashi that it does in Vaapad. So Mace has to extend a lot of energy to keep that style up the entire time. Whereas with Makashi, Dooku doesn't have to do it. He's more so playing for points in the way. He's parrying, deflecting, stabbing, and getting out of there. Whereas Mace is kind of basically trying to mow him down almost in a way. And I think the longer the battle goes, I think that the edge goes to Dooku in that regard.
Yeah, I would now. We have somebody new chatting actually. Frozen Tier 3 has an interesting question. Basically saying, is form level based on power or just a technique?
Technique.
Yeah, because the thing is all these forms are just like, it's kind of like Taekwondo versus, you know, Tai Chi or,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean,
Brazilian
because
Jiu-Jitsu or, something like that. They're just basically like
yeah,
combat
against Muay
forms.
Thai or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. It's
they're just
not
combat forms.
right. It's not like a reflection of the power. Now, of course, there is the power of the person wielding these forms, and that's going to affect
Sure,
things. But
absolutely. For
the
for
form
example,
level,
Master Yoda is Ataru, and that's what level. I mean, that's form what 3 or 4, and
yeah,
that's the one where he flips all, and that's when it's more acrobatic. But it's more so to your. You pick a style that more so fits your. I don't want to necessarily say your physique, but just
well, basically,
your. I'll
like I
probably say
guess your
your athletic ability.
yeah,
That's what I
or
would say. Your athletic ability.
physical attributes, maybe. I mean,
Yeah,
because obviously you take somebody like Yoda, right? He's a little shorter, so you know he's gonna pick a form that fits his stature, his athleticism, his,
hmm
like you said, basically overall physique and just skills. But I mean, it's not necessarily based on the power. Now, of course, you also can factor in the power of the people that are wielding these,
sure.
and that's going to matter. I mean, you get somebody like Yoda, somebody else comes along that's using his style, Yoda will probably prevail simply because he's more powerful. But again, and some of these forms are actually good. Like there's some which I don't remember. We did cover it extensively in the video though, where we talked about certain forms are good against certain other forms. Like there's a kind of like a
Like
cohesion,
Sorensu is good for blasters.
right? And then
So and
Obi
that's
Wan's form. What was his form?
Sorensu.
Is it okay? Yeah, so it's
Yep.
good against blast. But I
So
remember it's also
yeah,
an overall defensive form too. It's like,
it is.
and so that's and everybody besides their physical attributes, I think also people choose their forms based on their personalities as well.
hmm
So I mean, there is that too. So I mean, whenever you get into a serious discussion, because there's really like two or three levels of discussions if you're talking about just dueling. If you're talking about just lightsaber duels, you're going to obviously, yes, you do have to factor in the force powers and just the overall like force skill, because obviously the force is playing a role, both in sensing attacks, coming up with defenses, things like that, and just, overall strength. But I think a lot of people just base it on a very surface level thing, right? They look at, who's overall most powerful, who's like what we basically seen on film or in the animated shows, or perhaps even read in a book or in a comic. But then if you go deeper, which
Mhm.
whenever you and I tend to do these, we try to, we don't want to get so geeky that we're losing people here. But I mean, at the same time, you do legitimately have to factor in the lightsaber combat forms. I mean, if you're going to have a serious discussion about dueling and who would basically be the victor in any given duel, you have to factor in the lightsaber form that the duelist is essentially using. And I find that that's not
Mhm.
that common. Like people don't really uh they don't really think about, there's I'll bet you there's like a lot of people that don't even realize that the lightsaber forms even exist. I mean, it was a pretty popular video when you and I did it, but still, I'll even talk to people that are kind of in really into Star Wars, but they're like, "What are you talking about? Form 3? What?" It's like they have no idea. And, of course you get people that are like super super into it, even more so than us, to where they even take it to other levels. So, in order to have like in order to frame a discussion based on lightsaber duels, you have to factor this. And I think that you bring up a really good point that Mace would eventually burn himself out. Dooku's economy of motion, his whole fighting style, the form that he's using, all of those things combined, the fact that he understands also the way that the Jedi are trained to fight, as well as Sith, probably has the upper. So I would agree. All right, let's go to our next one. Of course, is we have immense force power on the Mace side, and we have basically precision and efficiency on the Dooku side. So Mace basically possessed really powerful telekinesis. I mean, look, this guy is like second only to Yoda pretty much on the Jedi side, right? He has enhanced reflexes.
Mhm.
He's got the ability to withstand attacks from elite Force users, and you don't have to look any further than his Episode 3 duel with Palpatine to see that, you know, Palpatine immediately dispatches all the other Jedi with him, but Mace kind of dominates the duel for quite a bit of that time. And,
Mhm.
obviously Palpatine probably, I mean, this is where, the age old debate ever since that movie came out, because Palpatine was using that to his own advantage and to get power and to discredit the Jedi. So he was probably holding back. Like, I don't know if Mace would have actually done as well if Palpatine was just trying to eliminate him. But he was kind of using them and toying with them a little bit. But still, you know, I mean, Palpatine wasn't. It wasn't like he was laying down and doing the one-handed thing like what Vader was doing with Luke. I mean, he was. But now we're contrasting that between the precision and efficiency of Dooku, and again, it goes back to the point that you made earlier, right? He doesn't waste a lot of energy or a lot of effort. He basically relies on his timing. He relies on his footwork, um, you know, counters, and he's very surgical and accurate with his strikes versus the brute force.
Mhm.
And so I think that, you know, this makes for a really interesting matchup as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what Dooku did to um, Obi-Wan in Episode 2, when they fought in that hangar, you got a chance to see just how like precise Dooku was. He was, making like even the small cuts, like in Obi-Wan's shoulder and his leg, and he was very precise. And like I said, Dooku's a master of all this, so he knows all these styles. He knows the strength and weaknesses of every style and who favors what style. I mean, he's been around a while, and he knows who's powerful, who's not. Not to mention, the fact that he kept up with Obi-Wan because his Padawan Qui Gon was his Padawan. So of course, it's kind of like a lineage thing with them, where it's like, oh, you're my Padawan's Padawan. Well, you're like my grandson. So of course, I know what you're gonna do. So that's an advantage too. But in that particular duel at least. But as far as the economy of motion and precision, I mean that's what makes him so deadly. It's just because you couple that with his intelligence, and he's very strategic. So all those things kind of working um, in a symbiotic flow. It's really um, it really shows why he's really a master at that. And he's very regal, very elegant about it. I mean, you know, he kind of does the old school, with our, obviously this won't be solved with our mastery of the force, but our knowledge of a lightsaber, and he raises his sword and he looks all, almost like they had like um, back in the Zorro days, the swashbuckling type of thing. That's kind of his era. I mean, especially for Christopher Lee. I mean, he comes from that era too, so that was easier for him to portray anyway. But
Well,
the
yeah, and
character of
Lucas
Dooku
Lucas
again
basically
is good like that.
yeah, Lucas basically honored that by creating the Dooku character pretty much for him. Not to mention
Hmm.
he had to, because he could still do all the handwork, but he couldn't move as well, 'cause he's like
Yeah,
80 something, so close to 90. So yeah.
exactly. Right.
All right. Well, let's move on then. We'll go for Mace. On the Mace side, we have physical strength and aggression. Dooku's side, we have powerful force abilities. So in Mace, he fights with very explosive power, which allows him to basically overwhelm the opponents, right? With sheer force. Like he can you know, just come at them like basically like a wall rather than just merely outmaneuvering. And then of course you
Yeah.
contrast
I mean,
that. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like Mason's a wrecking ball, man. I mean, he's he's coming right at you. I mean, you saw what happened again in Attack of the Clones when he went up against Django, and Django was just shooting at him, and Mace is deflecting as he's moving closer towards him before he lops his head off. I mean, very aggressive. you know, if you looked at a lot of the Clone Wars animation stuff, you can see like his force ability. He's very devastating. He's not like, okay, I'm gonna just move a couple of people. Like, no, he's moving whole battalions and like clearing rooms by himself. It's he's really not to be underestimated.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course on the Dooku side, he's going to hit you with all these force powers, right? I mean, he's got telekinesis, he's got his force lightning, he's got enhanced
Yep.
agility, defensive force techniques, which of course he's employing at a very elite level. So he's going to throw a big
Hmm.
battery of things that he's accumulated both as a Jedi and a Sith, which I think is something that really there's very few people like him in that regard. I mean, sure, you could talk about how, Mace channels the dark side a little bit, but Dooku is like full blown, he was a Jedi, then he leaves the Jedi Order, joins the Sith. So now he is a full master and wielder of both sides, or at least he can.
What One thing about Dooku that we don't have on here that I think we need to bring up is um, his ability to teach it. I mean, if you look at his students, besides Ventress and Grievous, both of them are like lethal. Like they're not to be, I mean, Grievous was collecting Jedi lightsabers. I mean, sure, he has an advantage being able to separate his limbs and, but um, Dooku was able to teach the style, so his knowledge just of everything and what he was even able to teach Asajj. When you have Asajj Ventress going up against Anakin and Obi-Wan at the same time, mind you, you know, I mean, she's learned from Dooku. I think that kind of gives an advantage when we talk about strategic, his knowledge, things of that nature. Um, I think simply because he's been doing it longer. I don't know the age difference between he and Mace. I mean, it looks like Dooku is significantly older than Mace, but we don't really know. So,
Not without looking it up.
I would, yeah, I would say that just offhand that Dooku has an edge just as far as he's been doing it longer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing you got to factor in too, right? Like how long people have been doing it, what's their what's their experience level. All right, and so finally, the last thing in the strength category, we're going to talk about Mace's mental discipline versus Dooku's strategic intelligence. So on the Mace side, he has really extreme focus, emotional control, and of course, resistance to fear, which makes him really hard to manipulate. And I think a lot of
Yes,
this
I mean,
also, you're factoring in a little bit of that use of the dark side. It's like he gets it, right? But then on the Dooku side, he's patient. He's a very patient planner. He's manipulated governments, armies, Jedi, political movements on a galactic scale. You get a little bit of a glimpse of this when he's working on Obi-Wan in episode 2, when he basically has him, and
hmm
he's kind of manipulating, and you can see, like, because even as an audience member, you're kind of like, well, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe Obi-Wan should join him. The guy's making a lot of sense right now, and it's kind of funny because he's working for Palpatine. He's a villain. But even as the old all-knowing audience member, because we have the big picture, even we as the
hmm
audience are kind of like, well, I don't know. The guy's actually making some good points here. So I think that's an important thing to note as well.
Yeah, I think Mace's mental discipline um, factors in a lot. He meditates a lot.
Yeah.
He's like you say, he's the second in command next to Yoda. So those two spend a lot of time together meditating and figuring out the direction because not only are is Dooku, like you said, Dooku's a brilliant strategist. He's taught obviously two really good assassins. He's in the political realm, all of those things. But then when you look at Mace, it's like Mace is in charge or second in command to the entire Jedi Order, which at that time was like probably what 1,500
Well, like
or so, maybe
more
two
than that.
thousand,
It's like, no, 10,000. Yeah,
but
like
10,000.
10,000
Okay,
back
even
then.
still.
Yeah.
So he's the number two guy, and so the mental discipline that you have to make sure that the order is moving in the right direction. Now, granted, he's not the be all end all because that's why you have a council. However, still, just to be number two next to Yoda, I mean, says a lot. That really says a lot. And we've seen moments where he's not quick to always rush into something. He's
Right.
like, okay, hey, let's take a second, and let's figure this out. Let's, what's the big picture here? What angle and what play are they trying to make? Even though it's like Anakin wants to rush in, he's like, hey, young Skywalker, not now. We need to do it this way. And they're like, oh, it's gonna, people are gonna die. He's like, they're gonna die anyway. But listen, we have a bigger
Exactly.
picture we have to worry about. you know, and just his ability to be, like you said, to remain calm. I mean, he's always like has that stern but yet calm demeanor, and the fact that he's not scared. I think that's a great point that you made. The fact that he has control of his fear. I don't see him being afraid of anything. Like you said, when he walked into Palpatine, and he knew how powerful Palpatine had to be in order for him to even do all this stuff. But he walked in just as calm as well, by the powers of the Galactic Senate, takes out the lightsaber. I mean, it's like he had this script in his head and he already knows what he wants to do and say. And he's not worried. I'm just like, dang. Like, I was almost like, do you even know who you're talking to? And he's like, yeah, and I don't care.
Yeah,
And
because
that's
even
one thing I loved about that character.
yeah, because I mean, even when he like watches like the four guys that are next to him get mowed down with no problem, he's just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna have to get to work here. It's like he's not,
Yep.
all the stuff that Palpatine talks about. He's just it doesn't even affect him. He's just a wrecking machine.
hmm
It isn't until he's trying to convince Anakin actually, and they're going back and forth. That's when Palpatine seizes on that weakness. But
Yeah.
if it hadn't been for, which is why, of course, Mace wanted Anakin to stay put because he knew that would probably happen. It would have gone very
hmm
differently on both sides because there's a lot of people, obviously, that theorize, and not that I talk about this all the time because there's not a whole lot of people that I'm really talking about Star Wars with like this, but sometimes in the past when it's been brought up, somebody will bring up the fact that, oh, well, if Anakin hadn't been there, man, Mace would have just been free to just wreck shop or whatever. I'm like, well, everybody forgets that Palpatine was acting the way he was acting because Anakin was there. Had that not been the case, it might have gone very differently the other way, too. We don't really know. So there is that.
hmm
All
Yep.
right. Well, now, of course, we're going to get into some of the weaknesses. So the first weakness on both ends is, on the Mace side, we have a very rigid worldview. He often saw situations in strict terms of duty and order. He was a little bit less adaptable politically and emotionally. But then on the Dooku side, you have extreme arrogance, where he basically underestimated his opponents constantly. He considered them less refined, less intelligent, or emotionally undisciplined. So, I mean, Dooku basically just like walked into the battle thinking he was the guy. So
hmm
you really have these two different things, which is kind of funny because they work against each other. Because you can see on the Dooku side where he might look at Mace as like a brute, right? Like a force brute, and him being refined and him being a little bit more strategic and a little bit more elegant in the way that he approaches everything, and he's a little bit more subtle. I think he would look at that as just like basically he's like a Mace is like a force meathead or something. Whereas on the Mace side of things, you know, he's not necessarily going to look at subtleties and understand, which is one of the reasons why Mace was able to be taken in by all this, because he just didn't see it. A lot of things were very black and white to him, and obviously Palpatine, Dooku, and all of his apprentices operated in shades of gray. So you could see where these weaknesses in a battle between these two could actually play off each other.
Yeah, I mean, with Dooku being older, seasoned, uh, knowledgeable, and that's the thing, when you are so knowledgeable and you've been doing it for a while, how you have tons of experience. I mean, you kind of have this arrogance. It's kind of, in a way, somewhat earned because it's like, listen,
Yeah.
it's almost like, like the Michael Jordan thing. Like, look, I've been doing this a while. Like, you know who I am. Like, been, handing people's butts for like ever. This is nothing new to me. Whereas Mace isn't a young gun like an Anakin or something coming in with all the, zeal and gusto. However, Mace, because he's more black and white, he misses the nuances of things, and I think that sometimes creates mistakes. Because if you're just like, it's either yes or no, this or that, and a lot of times in a lot of situations, all things don't work that way, and you miss like, oh, I would have caught that if I'd have considered this and that. So, even in the battle, you may not be paying attention to some things because it's like, oh, okay, Dooku does Makashi. Well, that's a very this black and white thing. But you forget that he's also a Sith Lord, and he's been trained under Palpatine. So he's of course he's had to learn some of the Sith ways and just to duel and keep up with Palpatine. So there's some things that he and their whole lightsaber form revolves around being sneaky. So you take that and you compile that with Makashi, again, very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, I think in a lot of ways too, um, you saw basically a lot of the same kind of arrogance that Dooku has, sort of on Yoda's side too, right? Like Yoda suffers from a lot of the same things. So, admittedly, he was kind of like, well, even some of the older Jedi are kind of, we're sleeping on the job
Hmm.
a little bit. I mean, they knew that basically there's this threat that they weren't seeing, and they couldn't really figure out why. And Yoda started to clue in on the fact that, well, even the more older, experienced ones were starting to get maybe a little bit arrogant here. But it unfortunately was a too little, too late type of situation. So I think in a lot of these more seasoned, experienced people, I mean, you can even make the argument, although I guess you could also say that arrogance is kind of part of the Sith way in a way. But essentially, Palpatine even started suffering. It's, Snoke. I hate to bring the dreaded sequels into this, but I mean, if you look at the undoing of all these like really powerful like Sith type guys, 'cause we don't really know if Snoke was a true Sith Lord or not. I mean, clone that Palpatine created, as we find out, but he obviously was trained in the dark side, but we don't know if there was like a Sith component. But either way, it was the same difference, right? They underestimated. Like Palpatine never thought that Vader would betray him. He didn't feel that. Same thing with Snoke. He's feeling like Kylo's thoughts. He just didn't realize they were directed toward him, not Rey. So, I mean, I think this like arrogance thing actually goes among both the Jedi and the Sith, and it does. It's when you get these older, experienced guys. Like you said, they've been around a while. They've been doing it a while. All right, weakness number 2. So, weakness number 2 on the Mace side, he's got limited diplomacy and empathy. And on the Dooku side, he's older and he's less physically durable. Very polite way of putting it, by the way. So with Mace, he's got this blunt, suspicious personality that can alienate allies, particularly Anakin. And this is true. It's like a lot of the fall of the Jedi in Episode 3 really could have been avoided if, in particular, Mace had just treated Anakin a little bit better and listened to him a little bit more and didn't alienate him so much that he basically partially ran to Palpatine because of that. And then, of course, on the Dooku side, even though he's got tons of power in the Force and enhances his movement and everything else, if you start to deal with a prolonged, highly physical combat, it could start to place him at a disadvantage. This is when his elegance and economy, emotion, and all that aren't serving anymore. It's like now you have a prolonged physical thing that's going on, and he could end up tiring out. Now, before you get to your comments on this, just real quick, I just want to get, because Grandmaster just popped this in. He said Count Dooku is my pick, so he's already, I don't know how much he's actually watched of this, but again, we're going through the strengths and the weaknesses, and then we'll figure it all out later. But he's already going with Dooku, so that's cool. All right, please continue.
Yeah, I think that um, May's lack of empathy, yeah, that sternness that he has, that kind of my way or the highway, um, that stalwart type of vibe. I mean, yeah, and it can affect you because it blinds you. Whereas in Dooku's case, we saw what happened, with a prolonged fight because when he was battling Yoda on in episode 2, after he, yeah, I think it was like kind of, was it? No, I'm trying to remember.
Well,
It was one of
basically,
those. I can't. It was either episode 2 or 3.
well,
But after he got done fighting, he was kind of took that deep breath, like he was tired. Like, man, And I'm trying to remember which film it was. I think it was episode 2.
yeah, because he basically, well, with episode 2, I remember he started realizing that he was starting to lose, and that's when he like knocked that big metal thing to try to crush Obi-Wan and
Oh,
Anakin,
Obi-Wan.
which, of course, he knew that, obviously Yoda would
That would
turn
distract
his
Yoda
attention.
enough.
Yeah, exactly, and then he was able to get out of there. So yeah, and I mean, obviously the duel in episode 3 ended up pretty much ending with his head getting chopped off. So, but yeah, I do remember the scene you were talking about. I remember that where he was like, you know, yeah,
Yeah, he's like, yeah, you could see he's physically tired.
and I believe
And
that was
even
2.
when
I
he
think you're
was,
right. I think it was 2.
yeah, I think it was 2 somewhere. So yeah, man, I mean, age does factor in, especially like when you have some young guy like Anakin who's full of vinegar, and he's coming at him, with all this youthful exuberance. Um, and man, you could tell like Mace, I mean not Mace, Dooku was really having a time trying to hold him off, because he's like, man, this kid's good and he's learned a lot since we last fought. So yeah, that alone is definitely a weakness.
Yeah. Well, now we move on to weakness number 3 on each of these guys. Whereas with Mace, aggression can become commitment versus uh, the fighting style of Makashi, which of course is what Dooku does, being less effective against groups. So with on the Mace side of it, once Mace decides to attack, his intense style basically leaves fewer opportunities to disengage or to change strategy or something like that. So it's almost like he has to, once he's in, he's in. And he's also in the way that he had initially planned. Can't really factor that in. Whereas on the Dooku side, with his fighting style, his preferred form pretty much more so against one-on-one combatants. Rather than defending like multiple attacks or blaster fire, which of course you pointed out was more of Obi-Wan's fighting style. It's a little bit more effective against blasters. So you basically have these two different fighting, or these two different weaknesses. Even though they're different, they're not as complementary as the previous couple were. They basically are showing weaknesses in their combat styles. Like I said, Mace, his aggression leads to commitment, so he's all in. He can't really disengage, can't really change styles. And Makashi again is more for a one-on-one duelist versus like multiple attackers or blaster fire, which again is more of Obi-Wan's thing. So yeah, I I could see that. And, both these guys are disadvantaged by these. Now, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I guess in a duel between each of them, because we're still talking about a one-on-one, I don't necessarily think that Dooku's weakness comes into play as much as Mace's does. Because again, it's kind of like, okay, he's all in, he's committed. If Dooku shifts on him, which he probably would, because Dooku is known for employing multiple strategies and things like that, and changing things up, Mace might not necessarily be able to react right away. And I think the reason why he would fare better against, of all people, Sidious is because Sidious kind of has that same thing going, right? I mean, Sidious is just kind of an all-in attacker. You know, he's got a little bit of that like stabby, um, type of thing going with his style.
Yeah, they're actually they're his Mace's Form 7 and actually they both use Form 7. It's just that they call it something different on the Sith side.
I
It's like
see.
you it's like Euro or like JUR or JUYRO or something like that. But it's basically the same form. However, it's a little bit more darker.
Yeah.
But I mean, well, yeah, I mean, I agree though. Makashi is not really designed for. I mean, sure, you can maybe take on multiple lightsabers. Sure, I mean, he's done it, and he's done it well. But again, it's not something that um, he can keep up forever. It's not really meant for that. Um, it's more meant for like a one-on-one situation. It's not really designed, like you said, it's not really designed for, group attacks or blaster fire.
Right. Now, Alarcardo basically quotes like a Spaceballs thing. So Lone Star. Now you see that evil will always triumph because good is dumble-faced, red, droopy eyes. And then he goes on to say that evilly's Dooku would win. So again, we got another vote for Dooku, which I find is interesting, especially because we haven't even gone through all this yet. But again, people are basically are going to base it on you know what they see in the films, kind of how they view the style based on that. I'm not saying that because there's a lot of people that are aware of the lightsaber. Don't get me wrong. This is just a really cool exercise, and so we're trying to factor in all these, and then of course we'll give our thing, which I'm still, to be honest, a little on the fence about. All right, so now our final weakness, Mace. He underestimates unconventional opponents versus Dooku being manipulated by Sidious. So on Mace's side, his confidence in Jedi authority and procedure sometimes prevents him from anticipating betrayal or deception, which I think we all saw on display in the prequel trilogy. Um, it's sort of like Yoda was a little bit blinded for his reasons. Now, again, you do have to factor in that Sidious was actively blocking the light side during the prequel era, so it's not 100% these guys' fault, right? Like the light side was literally being obscured, and a lot of what his little actions and things that they normally probably would have picked up on were being purposely blocked out. However, their own arrogance in their own code and dogma and so forth pretty much didn't help matters. And because he has such confidence in that Jedi authority and procedure, it can blind him to some of these betrayals. Now, of course, on the Dooku side, much like all of Sidious's apprentices, he believed that he was an essential partner in Sidious's plans, but he never fully understood that he was disposable. Of course, he understood that at the very end, but he did not understand that in the beginning. And so, once again, I think that you do have to you factor that in. Now, Alucardo basically says, in fact, Vaapad is the light side of Sith's side and used the anger of the Sith to beat him. If it wasn't from Anakin, Windu would stop Palpatine. Well, we addressed that earlier, and
Hmm.
and I have to clarify this because a lot of people say that, and I think it's a mistake to say that. And the reason I think it's a mistake is because at face value, I agree with that statement. However, Anakin's presence was also affecting how Sidious was fighting as well. he was using that as a means of deception and altering Anakin's views and basically solidifying Anakin's view that the Jedi were evil and that they're the blame and all this other stuff. Had Anakin not been there, yes, I did point out earlier in our show that Mace would have definitely fought differently. However, the thing I think that people miss is Sidious would have fought differently too. And that's where I think you cannot overlook that, because everybody always acknowledges the Mace part of it, but everybody forgets about the Sidious part. So I just had to put that in there. Now, Grandmaster has a couple of comments here. He says Dooku was a Jedi, and he says I choose Dooku despite him being a Sith. Well, yeah, and one of the things that we did go over, and actually that's going to be one of the attributes. We just did the strengths, okay? Now we're gonna, and then we just wrapped up our weaknesses. You didn't have anything more to say about that last weakness, did you? I know that we had some chats. Basically,
Not too much. Not too much. I mean, the whole. I mean, Mace being, I guess, like with unconventional, like, and I think what happened with Ahsoka when she got framed. I think that's a case in point where it's like you said, they were being blocked by the by the dark side, so they couldn't see certain things. So it's not completely their fault. Um, but that just shows you, like, how Mace, when Ahsoka was looking for help, and Mace and all of them pretty much like, no, she's guilty.
Yeah.
They pretty much
they jumped to some conclusions. Yep.
Yeah, jumped to some conclusions, and they couldn't even fathom that the fact that, like, okay, one of their own could have, changed, basically lied and set her up. And then, of course, the obvious, the Sidious, um, the whole moment when he's just like, kill him now, and he's just like, wait, what? He's like, do
it's
it.
like the best.
And he realized, like, oh.
Yeah, he had that look
And
of
it's just
horror
like,
because again, they all think that they're part of, like, hey man, we're in this together, right? It's not realizing that, no, not exactly. So yeah, that is
a play, right?
So Alicardo basically says, anyway, Darth Nihilus would fix them all. Yeah, Nihilus is pretty powerful. Of course, one of my favorites, Exar Kun, would really fix them all. But hey, we're sticking with Mace versus Dooku. Because, I mean, technically, it's kind of like, there's some of these other Sith Lords. And we did actually do a show on we've done a couple of them. There's one that's like a members only thing that you can access if you do one of our Buy Me a Coffee membership levels. So far, only a handful of people have seen it. But we did a top 5 Sith Lords where we each gave our top 5 Sith Lords. And we also did something else where we talked about most powerful Force users or something. And yeah, I remember Nihilus is in there somewhere. But it's kind of funny because Lucas always insists that Sidious is like the ultimate, but probably because he created it, so that's why. All right, so let's go back now then into the attributes. So for the attributes, again, it should be noted. I'm sure Daryl will be back shortly. With the attributes, you do have a couple of different things here. So we went over the strengths, we went over the weaknesses. Attributes is just basically talking about things that are unique among each one. Something that maybe gives them a slight strategic or combative edge, something like that, right? So for attribute number 1, of course, we're dealing with the lightsaber form, which is something that we've dealt with pretty much this whole show. But now we're actually, like, some of the stuff that we actually mentioned earlier in the show, now we're going to specifically compare and contrast. So Vaapad mastery versus Makashi. So Mace created and mastered a highly aggressive variation of Form 7. that allowed him to channel an opponent's darkness back against them. Of course, see how that would come in handy if you're fighting Sith Lords or dark side users. And the Makashi, which is Form 2, gave Dooku extraordinary blade control, defensive economy, and superiority in traditional lightsaber duels. So, again, the first attribute, obviously, is we are covering the forms, the actual lightsaber forms that they're using. Frozen Tier had asked very early in the show, is it based just on power, is it technique? And we're saying, okay, this is technique, but of course the power does back into this a little bit. For instance, if you're talking about the Vaapad mastery, right, it's kind of like, okay, Mace does an aggressive form of it, and then he also channels the darkness of the opponent and then throws it back at him. That's where the power is going to come. You know, you could arguably have somebody else that might be able to do that, but are they going to be able to do it to the level of Mace, given that Mace is so powerful? So, there's that. Same thing with Dooku, right? I mean, a lot of the Makashi thing is definitely a purely combative thing. However, if you are a powerful Force user, obviously you're going to be able to turbocharge this basically and make it even more effective. So you might be able to best somebody else using the same form, but maybe they just can't, let's just say, turbocharge it quite as much as somebody like Duke. So you basically have those going. Ted, before you give your thoughts, basically says, impressive that we have a chart this week. Well, yeah, anytime I do, like I said, the last time we did this, it was like Cad Bane versus, and I just forgot that quick. I think it was like Boba Fett versus Cad Bane, something like that. And we did a very similar chart. Whenever we do the versus things, you'll see that chart. We're going to, and obviously the different things that we compare, strengths and weaknesses are probably going to be there all the time. There might be other things that pop in as well. But anytime we do any of these versus shows, we like to enhance it. Same thing. When we went and did the whole show on basically the 7 forms of lightsaber combat, where we covered forms 1 through 7 in great detail. We had a very detailed presentation for that.
I think I even compared them to the actual real martial arts.
Yeah, you did. That was like a section of it. Remember, we had this very involved like PowerPoint presentation that went over it. I don't know if, I think basically what we did was we talked about the form, and then you then chimed in with what martial art it basically represented, and then we talked about which character was most famous for using it. I mean, it's actually, if you're impressed by charts, if you go back and you look at that one, that one we really went all out, man. That was like a crazy thing. So yeah, I don't know. You have any thoughts about the two fighting?
No, I mean, I just think that with the fighting style, I think it's like I said at the top of the show. I think it just depends on who shows up that day, and there's just a lot of variables that you have to,
That's a good point.
include. So you have to look at like, okay, how long is the battle going on? Is it a quick battle, or can Mace kind of get ahead and wear him down with aggression, or can Dooku keep his distance and still be able to deflect and make entire Mace out? I mean, those are because of the styles it's in and of itself lends to that. It's one is economy of motion, so you're not expending as much energy as as Mace would. So it just depends. Um, I mean, I would say I would give the edge to Dooku in that regard, honestly.
Yeah, I would too, simply because if you factor in, the other weakness that we talked about where Mace can't really change his tactics, it's basically aggression with commitment. He's going to be all in. It's going to be a brute force, and he's going to try to overwhelm with that and win pretty early. But eventually, you get somebody like Dooku, who's a strategist, and he can pivot and he can do different things and he can change things up. Which you basically see that in episode 3, right? It's kind of like he dispatches Obi-Wan, pretty much immediately again. And then when he goes to fight Anakin this time, he realizes that Anakin's like, well, you're a little different than you were last time we met. And so if you even watch, this isn't even really expressed. I mean, I guess they did imply this in some of the lines they were saying, but I mean, if you just even watch the action, you could tell that Dooku now alters his style a little bit. Like he's still using the same form, obviously, but he's using it in a different strategic way than he was earlier. And so he has the ability to pivot.
Like he fights Obi-Wan differently than he does Anakin.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that's something that's, really important. Okay. Attribute number 2, spoiler, we got 4 of them. You guys can see that in the chart. So we got Shatterpoint ability on the Mace side, and we have a curved lightsaber hilt on the Dooku side. So basically, what the Shatterpoint thing is that Mace can basically perceive like critical weaknesses in people, objects, battles, situations. So he can identify the precise point or moment or whatever where everything could break. And so you could see how this would serve very, very well in a duel or any kind of a situation. Now, of course, that's a little bit more of a force power-y kind of thing. On the Dooku side, we had the curved lightsaber hilt, and of course, this basically improves wrist control, blade angle, precision, making his attacks a little bit more difficult to predict because, again, you got a curved hilt versus the normal straight hilt, which gives you a little bit of a difference, and it does make it a little bit difficult to perceive the attacks. So both of these guys have a definite strategic advantage. It just depends on which one you actually think really matters, them battling each other.
Yeah, I would give the advantage to Mace on that one. I think having the ability to pinpoint, even though it's force guided, just having that ability, um, it influences your strikes. It influences how you move, um, and ultimately, it can win you the battle very quickly,
Yeah.
which is what he usually likes to do.
Grandmaster basically agrees with Ted that the charts are A+, so I'm glad that the charts are a hit with people. Again, it just, instead of it just being, a raw discussion, it gives some sort of a visual reference for people to actually like hang on to. I always like to come up with the charts if possible because it just makes the show more interesting. And speaking of the charts, it's back because now we're going with attribute number 3. So on the Mace side, we have Dark Side Resistance, and on the Dooku side, we have Jedi, Sith, and Knowledge, which, of course, we have been talking about this pretty much peppered all the way through the show. But
Yeah,
on the Mace side, with the Dark Side Resistance, unlike most Jedi, Mace could fight close to the edge of darkness without being consumed by it. And that's a huge advantage because it allows him to basically channel some of the dark side abilities and power, but without actually having it overtake him. And that's something that's, at the time of the prequels, he's kind of like the second most powerful Jedi next to Yoda. And this is one example of why he can actually do it. Now, it's interesting to me, and I have read some novels where it's been addressed among the characters, but it is fascinating to me because Yoda is so dogmatic against don't even let a little bit of darkness in. It's kind of weird that he just kind of lets it go that, yeah, Mace, all right, you're
he trusts
channeling.
Mace.
Yeah,
That's
he
why.
has to.
Yeah.
He has to because that would never fly. Now, on the Dooku side, we had the Jedi and Sith knowledge. So as a former Jedi Master and Sith Lord, Dooku understands the teachings, he understands the tactics, and he understands, more importantly, the weaknesses of both sides. So he can incorporate all of this, in addition to the aforementioned fighting style and everything else, he could actually factor all these things in. So it definitely is a special attribute that helps. And so each one of these on these guys, again, if you're matching it up, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to almost give the edge on Dooku on this one too, really, because
Yeah, I would give the
sure,
edge to Duke on this one as well.
it's like right because okay, Mace can channel some of the dark side, but so what? So can Dooku. Dooku could probably do it more so because he's actually been consumed by the dark. He knows the light. He understands fighting styles, weaknesses. So
Yeah, not to mention it's kind of like it's the the mindset that where your opponent won't go. It's kind of like with Superman and Batman. Like with Superman, he's not going to kill, but with Batman, he's not going to kill. But you don't. He gives you that doubt, like he just might today. It's just he does things that makes you wonder, like he's close. He might actually do it. And I think that's kind of what Dooku um, has on the side is the fact that he knows that the Jedi will only go so far.
right now, on a somewhat unrelated topic, before I get to the final attribute, number 4, Iron Boy Wonder joins us again tonight, and basically he's talking about something that came out earlier today, where sources have said that Ewan McGregor is probably going to come back as Obi-Wan Kenobi for Ahsoka season 2. This is basically like, I don't know. This is like a good Grandmaster question, actually, since he's actually watching. Normally, he answers this kind of thing in the Discord, but he might actually be able to chat in and just answer this directly for us. Just do it quick, because he always retracts all of his messages. I assume he's doing that so there's no record of him in case he loops some overlords
Yeah.
know his handle or something. So,
All right.
all right. So the final attribute,
Didn't happen.
yeah, exactly. Attribute number 4: battlefield leadership on the Mace Windu side, and then political charisma on the Dooku side. So essentially, you have Mace, who's the senior Jedi Master General. He's got extensive command experience, and he can quickly evaluate combat situations. So he's really good with battlefield leadership. And he, of course, the more time goes on, pretty much it's more and more. So he does have that expertise. Now, again, in a one-on-one duel, I guess you can argue that it matters a little, but I don't know. And then, of course, with Dooku, he has this whole aristocratic presence. He's got that whole nobility thing going, right? He's a count. He's good at persuasive speaking. His reputation allowed him to command the separatist movement and command powerful allies. So, when you're talking about this, these are just attributes that these guys have. I mean, in a duel between each other, I'm not necessarily sure, you know, it's almost a draw, I think, at that point, but I don't know.
I mean, I would say in this particular situation, Mace wins. Mace wins because that battlefield leadership is invaluable. Like I said, it's
Yeah, but you
experience.
can't.
The more,
But here's the problem, though, and this is true in the Clone Wars, is that you could argue that Dooku has just as much battlefield experience because he's led a bunch of battles on the Separatist side. So it's,
oh, sure,
I mean,
sure.
I mean,
But I
unless
think
you think you're just saying that Mace is better at it, is basically what you're saying.
I think Mace may be better at it just overall in a strategic sense, where not just in space battles, but on the ground, on just all around. I just think that in battlefield situations, he again, because he has a sense of calm. Um, Usually, Dooku, I mean, he kind of has other people doing it for him.
Yeah.
Grievous, Trench, the big spider looking thing. Um, they had that algorithm where that machine that when they took, what's his name from the Bad Batch, and they basically was like, okay, well, we learned all their maneuvers. You see what I'm saying? Like it. I don't know how much of Dooku. Not saying that he didn't do, a good job, with strategy, because we know that's part of his thing. But I think this thing Mace does it better, just because he's literally been on the front lines. He's been in the thick of it more often. Dooku is kind of sitting back and kind of just looking at it.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, even though Dooku has been on the front lines, it is probably not as often as Mace. So I can go along with that. So yeah, in that sense, I can see that. All right, Iron Boy Wonder has got a lot here. First, he was like he would love to see Ahsoka Tano, like a reunion before the 1977 era. He would like to see him come in the exact cave that Obi-Wan did, with Senator Bail Organa, basically 18 years before the Battle of Yavin, after Tales of the Jedi. And yeah, that would have been kind of nice if they had Ahsoka pretty much show up. Because he's really interested more so in the Obi-Wan thing. It looks like than this topic we're doing, but hey, that's all right. We talk about everything here. He also thinks that Jimmy Smith should come back again before the final appearance, because obviously he had to be replaced, and then Benjamin Bratt came in and pretty much replaced him. And he was basically saying, ironically, Jimmy Smith is Puerto Rican. And yeah, we knew all that, and I agree. I mean, it would be nice if Jimmy Smith could reprise his role as Bail Organa again in some sort of a project. I did like the portrayal that Benjamin Bratt did. I was actually surprised about how much I was able to accept it, because Smith basically originated the role. All right, Alicardo says the Jedi Code stops Windu from reaching full. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then,
True.
of course, Grandmaster says that confirmed Jimmy Smith will not be in any more Star Wars. He was replaced by, of course, Benjamin Bratt in Star Wars Season 2. So, yeah, that's Grandmaster. Looking right at it. So, yeah, I mean, given all this information that we have, suppose we have to render a final verdict of who is going to be the victor in the Mace Windu versus Count Dooku. Now, ironically, a few of the people that have, popped up in the chats are basically going with Dooku on this.
I personally, I still think it's a draw. But if I had to give an answer, I'm going to give it to Dooku.
Yeah, it was kind of tough. And to be honest, I was waiting to just. Because, I mean, obviously, I put the show together, so I read all these. But I purposely didn't. I wanted to keep the discussion really fresh. And
Mm-hmm.
I basically was just like, okay, let me just get these out, but let me not think about it. Like, we'll write it, but we won't think about it until the actual show. And so I really wasn't committed to either one yet when we started this. But I have to go ahead and pretty much give the edge to Dooku on it. I mean, the whole strategy thing, plus the fact that he's both Jedi and Sith. And Mace, as powerful as he is going to be bound by a lot of the Jedi Code. In fact, Alicardo uh, goes ahead and repeats the whole Sith thing, which peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. And then Grandmaster decides to add a
Sith
little bit
code.
more to the other, saying confirmed Ahsoka's character will not time jump that time Obi-Wan series, but will use WBW. Oh, World Between Worlds.
World Between Worlds.
Yeah, in the Ahsoka season. Okay, good. That's good to know. And of course, we know that Ahsoka season 2 has been pushed back to, I think, like, well, it was like February. Now I think they're just saying 2027. So we'll have to see on that one. But yeah, I think that definitely, we can agree with our audience. Like, this time I won't fight the audience too much. I'll be like, you know what? All right, you guys, you're probably right here. Go ahead and give the nod to Dooku for a number of reasons. When you factor in all the attributes, when you factor in the strengths and weaknesses of both, more than likely Dooku is going to be victorious. And what I find interesting about that is that you'll still get people that'll be like, well, Mace would have been able to beat Palpatine. It's like, okay, well, you all are saying that Dooku could beat Mace. So, how's Dooku beating Mace, but Mace is somehow beating Palpatine? This doesn't compute here. But whatever, that's Star Wars fan. That's just the way it is. But yeah,
it is.
Well, this was actually kind of fun. We should do stuff like this more often.
Definitely. Yeah, there'll be more to come.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Once we finish up with the Ninth Jedi.
Well, yeah, and I was gonna say, because usually this would be the point that I'd be like, all right, you've been like on fire the last couple of weeks. Like at the end of every show, you've been coming up with all these topics for the next show. But for the next, what is it, like 8 episodes?
Yeah.
So for the next 8 weeks or whatever, I mean, as long as work schedules and everything agrees. Yeah, for the foreseeable future, it's going to be the Star Wars Visions 9th Jedi review. So starting next week, I don't know if they're just going to release, well, they release them all at once because of the Visions thing. So obviously we'll just do the one episode at a time. So watch us next week where we'll be reviewing Star Wars Visions 9th Jedi Episode 1. And of course, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you subscribe, please hit the notification bell because sometimes, even like today, I mean, okay, at least we were on tonight, right? But we shoot for Sundays at 8. We had a few technical things that just, I don't know, something just happened with the computer or whatever, and then caused us to come on at 8:20. So the idea is if you hit the notification bell, if we have days, obviously check our social media. You can find us at X, Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook group called Head to Head, a Star Wars community. And I mean, look, you can, we got our Discord. We really keep up with the Discord. So that's really where you want to concentrate all of your discussion. But we try to let everybody know on our social medias if we have to move the topic. There's a YouTube community page. We keep up with that. We sometimes put polls up there. So there's all kinds of ways to interact when we're not live. And so you can keep up with us and everything. And then, of course, I mean, if you are so inclined, the other thing that you can do is you can hit us with our Buy Me a Coffee, and you can just, throw $1 or $2 or $5 or whatever our way is like a tip. But if you guys want to commit to something on a monthly basis, we got these different levels of membership that you can go and you can sign up and pay $5, $10, or $25 a month, and you can see you get all this stuff. And that, of course, that's like a little bit of a thank you to us, but it does support our channel, and it would help us grow if we get enough people doing it. So again, ultimately, we're just glad that you guys are here and that you're watching and that you're participating and chatting and commenting, liking, and all that stuff. So I mean, that's good. But if you guys do want to go that extra level, there are other options. All right, let me go through the rest of these chats real quick before we wrap it up tonight. So Grandmaster gives us a little bit more information because Iron Boy Wonder opened the door. He says, many online rumors about Ewan and Ahsoka too. Executives has set up a lot of new filming and new pickups now. They and Linwin are making all the decisions He basically goes on to say, from what I have seen of the new filming, it is a lot better, a lot more surprises. So that is good. Iron Boy Wonder. Oh yeah, yeah. The bail is right. It's 9 years before the battle, but again, like Grandmaster pointed out, we're not going to go back there, unfortunately. But yes, that's pretty much where it falls in. Grandmaster wraps it up by saying, I strongly advise both of you to do an episode talking about what happens at D23. Going to be a lot to talk about. Well, we generally do. So anytime there's a Star Wars celebration or a D23, we do. And it's like borderline embarrassing, but I forgot when it actually is. But let's just say D23, because I know it's around like August. I think it is sometime this month. We will, we'll do one of two things. If there is like a bunch of stuff at D23, we probably will pause the reviews for a week. Because again, the whole series will be out. It's not like a week-to-week thing. We will do that and cover D23. Especially if there's stuff. Like Celebration we do regardless. But D23 we generally do if there's a lot of really big Star Wars related stuff. Because obviously, you know, those conventions are more, the D23 thing, it's more of like a kind of like a Disney thing. Lucasfilm is part of it, but so is like Marvel and Disney and Pixar and all that stuff, right? So you do have to factor that in. However,
it's the 14th through the 16th.
Okay. There you go. So maybe the August 16th show, if enough news is dropped or there's like a trailer or two or something. I mean, I'm sure that we might see something from Starfighter at that point, possibly. You know, I'm sure there'll be some Ahsoka Season 2 talk. I'm sure Grandmaster knows. And if you guys go to the Discord, I'm sure he'll tell us all about it. So, lots to look forward to. So we'll do on the August 16th show, provided we can do a show on that day, is we'll actually, we'll make that like the D23 wrap up and see what happens. And then we'll resume our reviews. So that's probably how we'll play that. So we thank Grandmaster for reminding us about that. And yeah, with that, I think we're going to just see you guys next week for episode 1 of the 9th Jedi review. So with that, I am Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.